well. And there's a war on all the masculine regimes and institutions of the world, such as the state of Russia, Taliban, military, police, things like that. Even the black men are under attack. They're putting all the black rappers in dresses. Black rappers used to be last vestige of masculinity because they beat women and called them bitches and shot people. And now Kid Cudi's wearing a dress on Saturday Night Live. So there's a worldwide war on men. We need to replace it with a worldwide war on women. And so I think that's 2 minutes. So that's my opening statement. Yeah, so I guess I would start with what Doobie said about how girls are filling up these spaces where they weren't allowed in, and now men just can't compete. I mean, that might be true, except for the fact that the standards are having to be lowered in order to accommodate quotas for women. And you see this in the military, you see this in the police in particular. It's the best example, where they have to lower the physical fitness standards to allow women to get in. And you see this in a lot of major companies. They have quotas for how many women they have to hire, how many women, for example, some of the major stock indices like the NASDAQ, S&P 500, they have set quotas for how many women need to be on the board of directors of the major companies. So it's not a question of competition. It's as though it's something happening naturally. In a state of nature, men are stronger than women. And so if it was ever a competition, men would just beat the shit out of women, but that's not allowed. And if it was a battle of competence, well, men would also win that competition. So that's why they have to lower the standards. That's why they have to have quotas. That's why they have to have HR and, bureaucratic society change the rules. So that also answers the Hunter Avallone point that none of this is happening with intent, that it can't be a war because there's no intent. Well, what do you call all these policies that are trying to socially engineer the society for more so-called female representation? That's intent. That's the lack of competition, which you said that there is. So right there, I mean, that's completely debunked.
Yeah, can I respond to that?
Yeah.
Really? Okay. But
the point of what I was saying was that.
Miserable because
wait
a minute.
Wait a minute,
like
guys. The
to
point of what I was saying is that.
Stardust, excuse me. Women are depressed because they're all going to hell. Okay. Hell, the dirty little fact is that hell is filled to the brim with women.
My dude, women are depressed because they exist in the same world as you. So can we get back to my point?
That's whether they're in the home. Yeah. Well, I just want to say this before we kick it over to Styles. I'll say one other thing. The reason I brought up inventions is this: whether it's a military combat or it's innovation or it's the big companies and the stock indices, the point is that the sort of elevation of women is artificial, it is deliberate, it's intentional. Because that was the claim, is that the displacement of men by women in some places is just a natural evolution of society. And I said, whether you look at military or you look at the boardroom, you've got quotas, you've got standards being lowered. It's social engineering. This is not laissez-faire. This is not just something that's happening as a consequence of competition. This is by design, and it's and clearly, if standards are being lowered and quotas are being raised up, that's clearly intent. And it's something that is negative towards men and positive towards women. So, I mean, that was the point.
That lacks nuance. So, like, for example, you're right that there are some cringy companies that actually do have quotas for, like, we must have this many women, we must have this many black people. And that's fucking cringe. I agree with Doobie that diversity for diversity's sake is probably not a great idea. But this idea that it's all being socially engineered is bullshit. I mean, we're seeing women succeed in college, for example, even more so than men. That is very, very natural. It's a common thing that's happening.
No, it's
and
not.
If we want to talk about things that are socially engineered, I mean, we can look on the other side of things. Why do you think there are so few women in positions of like STEM or mathematics or scientific research? The reason for this is because growing up, they are socialized to not be believing that they are actually as smart or as good at those types of subjects, when in fact they actually are.
The divorce rates skyrocketing and the breaking up of the families, which I think has led to a lot of our societal downfalls. But I am going to yield my time to Nick because
let's go. See, that's a pro man advocate right there. Saying, hey, we'll give the platform to the man. Right on, Brittany. That's why we love you. That's why we love you. Yeah, well, here, I mean, we're just sort of all over the place. The point is that men are being displaced by women in the society, and it's by design, and that constitutes a war. And that's happening professionally, educationally, culturally. It's not just, nobody's talking about this because they're setting quotas. If they're setting quotas,
other than a couple cringy companies that set quotas, which we all agreed are cringe.
Do you know what the stock
What else is
indices are?
socially engineered to happen?
There's quotas and it's not just a few companies, it's the biggest companies in the world. It's in the federal government, it's in the military, so-called female representation. So you've got it in the private sector in the economy. You have it in the universities. And then you also have it even in you have it in movies and TV shows. There's quotas about how many.
When women are part of companies or the government, those companies, the government, whatever they're a part of, it flourishes. It does well.
On what planet? If companies, hey, think about it. If companies flourished because of female representation, they wouldn't need to be forced to accept a quota. If women made companies thrive, companies would just bring them in just because.
Not every female hired is part of a quota system.
Yeah, not every female hired is part of a quota. Not to mention, and Nick asked what evidence there is of this. There's literally over there's over 3 decades of research showing that when women are part of firms, whether that be banks, the military, any kind of a large group, they absolutely benefit that company. This is why some of the top earning companies across the world literally are out earning companies that don't have women. The companies that are the most successful are also companies that have more diversity and more women. The companies that are not as successful are lower in regards to the amount of women they have working in that industry. So this idea that it's all just a quota is not true necessarily. Again, I agree that diversity for diversity's sake is unnecessary, but acting like every woman in every position is somehow there because of a quota is not true. It's probably because, partially at least, women benefit significantly in working in those firms.
Also women nowadays are overtaking men in education, right? So I mean,
because education is a joke
being
now.
Better, so.
Education is a joke now, Stardust, because they rely less on standardized testing now more than ever, and also because there is a bias towards women in admissions. And Hunter, I would ask you this: it's a very simple question. If women were such a value add to the companies, why would the stock indices, why would NASDAQ, why would S&P 500 mandate that for a company to get on their listing, they need to have a minimum number of women on the board? If women were such a boon, wouldn't companies who are profit seeking, wouldn't they naturally hire as many women as possible so that they could have an edge? Why would they need to be required to have women if that were the case?
With some of these, I'm explaining.
Well, answer the question.
I'm trying to right now. This is the exact problem with women being put in a place where they have less privilege because they are perceived as being irrational. They're perceived as not being as smart or as available for the job. And I see Nick and Hake right now nodding their heads. I mean, we have two of the most irrational chuckle fucks here on the panel acting like it's actually the women who are somehow irrational. Not only has that been disproven repeatedly, but it's because there are biases that exist, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
People have been raised to believe that women are the quiet ones who should stay at home, and it's the men who are the big tough thinkers. Then they're probably going to be more likely to hire men, even though hiring women actually benefits their company more.
That's why they have to be forced to do it. That's why they have to be forced to do it, is because
Nick,
it's so self-evident.
You're just reinforcing, you're just showing how strong sexism and patriarchy are. You're just showing how strong it is. It overrides rationality. It's broken your brain. It's so strong. It's so strong that even companies will actually make less profit just because there are sexist underlying mechanisms in their fucking brains. That's how bad it is. So
I want to say this, sometimes women will be above men in the pecking order, right?
No, never. That should never be allowed to happen. Right. No, never.
Even when they're just better, they're better suited for the position. They have
That's
a better
literally
personality.
impossible. That is literally impossible. No, they're not.
You can even look. You can even look at. You can look at medicine. You can look at medicine.
Stardust.
Female doctors have better outcomes for their patients than male doctors.
Please. If I had a female surgeon, I would rather take a bullet. I would rather
would be
get
alive.
Killed. I'd rather get taken out in the backyard
by female doctors
than have a
over male
female surgeon
doctors.
operate on me. I would never hire a female lawyer. I would never hire a female doctor. So my mom told me, she was like, I have a financial advisor I'd like to introduce you to. It's a woman. I said, forget it. I'd rather Bury my money in the back.
There are studies on this.
Stardust.
Comparison of hospital mortality and readmission rates for Medicare patients treated by male versus female physicians. Female physicians had better outcomes by far.
Those are Obama. That's Obama healthcare. So that's trash to begin with. I disagree.
It doesn't matter.
I think that the greatest doctors in the world are men.
So what? What Stardust is demonstrating is quite clear that having a female doctor literally results in better outcomes and better care.
Would you agree that women are better at taking care of people? You disagree with the study.
I absolutely. I do disagree with that. They're maybe good at taking care of babies or the elderly, but in terms of precision surgeries and being a doctor, no, I would never trust a
the
female
studies
doctor.
say otherwise. Well, they make better teachers.
Excuse me, Stardust. No, they don't. I don't think so. The greatest teachers in the world, professors, are men, philosophers, mathematicians.
You're gauging from history when women were kept out of those positions, doctors,
dude. Hunter, the biggest argument for war against men is your negative canthal tilt, okay, and your squishy face.
Oh, wow.
All right.
Advocating for war is a political opinion.
Finally,
now,
man,
as far as men and women, I agree with you, Stardust. I agree with you that girls are better at very specific small things, such as having kids, and men are better at literally everything else.
No,
but
this is a lie.
Literally
everything else, really.
Literally everything else.
Got him, dude.
For example,
I'm going to insert my masculine dominance and cut in here. So,
okay, go ahead.
Scotty, we'll go ahead and see if Nick Fuentes all of a sudden just decides to randomly disagree with.
Why did you say my last name like that?
Because I thought it was funny. So when you have women in proper positions, your firm, your company benefits. This has now been demonstrated in over 1,000 companies. Nick, do you disagree with that?
Yeah, that's fake. That's correlation causation fallacy. It proves nothing. Have you ever worked with women before?
You're actually hysterical. Wait.
I've worked with lots of women.
Before I talk about if I've ever worked with women,
you
understand that it's almost
women are a complete disaster in the workforce.
Totally
they cry all the
time. Some of them are.
They're like babies. They get sent home.
Do you understand that unless you can do something
they have their period,
sexual assault.
They have their period once a month.
Nicholas, please. Do you recognize that unless you are literally looking at something like in a lab or under a microscope, it's virtually impossible to actually prove causation?
Yeah, you're not demonstrating that. Yeah, you're not demonstrating causation at all.
I'm not trying to.
Yeah, you literally are. You're saying that women.
You don't understand how.
You're saying that women being in the workforce means that the companies perform better. Well, maybe they perform better.
This
for
is
other
really
reasons.
sad. I'm very sorry.
Go ahead, explain it then. I'd love to. What are you trying to demonstrate then?
It's virtually impossible to prove causation. So for you to try and hand wave this as, yeah, but it's just correlation, not causation. Yes, I know. The point of the matter is there is a significant rate of correlation with over 1,000 companies that have high percentage of female executives. That high correlation is the proof. That's the evidence right there. You cannot demonstrate causation. So you go with
saying
the
it's
best
impossible to prove
your
dude. You're coming across like a retard right now. You're saying that it's impossible to prove your point with your own study.
Nick, you're going to call out Alex, right? Because that's just correlation there, not causation.
I wasn't paying attention, but either way, your study is trash.
Well, what he just said was that it was correlation. It wasn't causation. So
I wasn't paying attention. I was reading the live chat, but
it's very convenient for you.
But to rewind here, to take it back here a step to the original point, I think that it's quite simple, actually. To return to the initial point, is there a war against men? Men are being displaced. Nobody on the other side has disagreed with this. Men are being displaced.
Well, I would say that if we're going to say wait, Nick. No. Okay. Because you said this so many times.
Can I finish line here? Let's let Nick.
Fine.
Thank you. Thank you, Stardust. Thank you so much, Stardust. I appreciate you. So some people on the panel, on the opposite side of the panel, will concede that men are being displaced. That's what I think Doobie said, is that he says it's happening organically, and Hunter said it's not happening by intent. But I mean, I think there is enough concession on the other side that this displacement is occurring. Now they are saying, well, that's natural, or that's a good thing, but they're saying it's happening. Well, what's more, if we acknowledge that there are quotas in place in the military and in the private sector and other places, we're saying that the displacement is not completely organic. There's a debate about to what extent it's organic. Is it largely organic? Is it not very organic? But it is to some extent being engineered, and it is artificial. And I don't know how that could be perceived as any other way. If men are being displaced by design from private sector, government, receiving benefits, all the education, all these kinds of things, how could that be perceived as anything other than women being elevated in a way that's not organic at the expense of men? And it was talked about earlier about how are the quotas? How does that constitute a war against men?
Before you go on to another thing, can I respond to the?
I want to make one last point.
Okay.
One last point about quotas, why that matters. If the quota says there has to be a minimum amount of women, what that means is if there was no quota, you would hire the most qualified people. And if that means 100% men, that means 100% men. A quota means necessarily you have to discriminate against men. Now, if there was no quota, maybe you get women and men, maybe you get all men. But the quota is in place to ensure that if there was a qualified man versus a less qualified woman, the woman would be selected. That's like by definition what it is. Otherwise, you wouldn't need a quota. If you're just hiring the most qualified people and let the chips fall where they may, you would get any kind of distribution. But if there's a quota that says there's got to be 1 or 5 or 10% women, that means you're going to have to discriminate in favor of a girl against a man, and a man's position has to go to a woman. So if this is and by the way, it's not just about that. That's the principle that's animating the society. You're not listening. That's a principle that's animating the society.
I mean, his schizo rant has gone on now for a while.
It's not. Do you know what schizophrenia means?
I want to engage into this thing about the quota.
Well, this also isn't fair because I don't think that Nick is really legally allowed to be in within 100 feet of women in general. So I just don't know if that's even a fair thing. I get that you would never hire women, but is this some principled stance or is this what the courts require of you?
I don't want to be within 100 feet of your wife. You're
already not allowed to be 100 feet within the nearest elementary school, so we'll go ahead with that.
I guess with her highlights and her horse face. I wouldn't want to be anywhere near that thing you're sleeping with. But I will say this, okay? The thing is, I don't think that a woman would be qualified for. I may hire a woman to be a secretary, a receptionist. I don't consider a woman to be qualified to do a high level.
I don't think you're qualified to do this hiring, to be honest.
Wait, hold on. She's not qualified because she's a woman, right? So you're yeah, okay, I understand.
Doesn't have the faculties.
So say all the psychotropic drugs, SSRIs actually create suicidal idealization. So I think that's the reason for the big increase is all the psychotropic medication people are prescribed.
So does LGBT stuff.
Also women yelling at us.
Bandit Dragonite says, Nick is right. There is no a priori reason to believe that women make companies more profitable. Correlational evidence is weak.
Real. Yeah, women, and here's the thing. If women were the secret sauce, I could be a trillionaire by making a company of all these genius women that are just being cast aside by these sexist, ignorant men that just don't see it. But that's not happening because it's not profitable because women, and here's the thing, women can be competent in certain roles, but the one role that women cannot do well is leader. Women are not good leaders. Women are good taskmasters. Women are good negotiators in the sense of, negotiating conflict. I don't know if they're good in negotiations, but they're good at negotiating conflict between people. So there are skill sets that women have, but leader is not one of them. And
this is not true.
So high level, and also on extremely technical things. So high level positions and extremely technical fields like lawyers, doctors, business leaders, entrepreneurs, politicians. This is why you don't see female representation. It's because women don't like those things. Women aren't good at those things. So, and it is true, by the way, that, women can do some things well or some things right sometimes, but even women that can do high level tasks, they're not suited for leadership roles. And that's why you don't see them on the boards of companies.
This is not true. Did you forget the literal thing that I read you earlier?
Did I forget the literal thing? Listen.
You can listen. Hey, you can keep. I'm more than happy for you to make fun of how I talk. But
excuse me.
Wait.
Excuse me. Man talking here. I'm a man of the world, and I see how women behave. I've worked with women. I see how women operate.
I don't care what you see in your day-to-day life.
I don't care about your study, which confuses correlation for causation.
I don't care what you've seen in your day-to-day life. If we were to gauge what people saw in their day-to-day life to come to a broader conclusion, we'd all be sitting here believing the world is flat. It wouldn't just be Alex who believes that.
The world is flat.
So second of all, why are you saying that women are not good in leadership roles? But again, I already read you the study that showed that.
What did the study? Did the study say that women are good leaders? Did the
It
study
said
say that
companies with
women
more
are
than
good
30%
leaders?
women executives were more likely to outperform companies that didn't have as many women.
Which
But
does
there are all
not
these
prove.
grants
Which
and
does
these-
not prove what you're saying it proves.
Women executives, they are in leadership roles, my friend.
Which does not prove what you're saying it proves. Just because a company outperforms another company and there's this arbitrary difference, that does not prove that women are competent leaders.
Right.
Wait,
at all.
I would agree with you if this was one single company, but when you have over 1,000 companies that you look at internationally, or over 1,000 employees, it may have been over a couple hundred, but
You don't
either
even
way,
know
when you
what
have
your own
several
study
different
says.
companies that are all showing the same result, and the different variable there is that one company or those companies doing better have more women, and the other companies that are not don't, and that's the only variable,
Oh,
then
yeah?
yes, you can come to a reasonable conclusion that women are benefiting these companies, and it can be correlation while it's still being
You're
reasonable
just
to
like-
believe
A
that.
lot of these,
You're
a lot
just
of these.
not holding yourself to a high standard here. I mean, the richest
Yeah.
woman in the world acquired her wealth through divorce. Okay,
You don't
and there's never
understand
been a
what the
woman
fuck you're
president.
talking about. You're
and
trying to
there
say
are no
you
women
dismiss the studies
philosophers,
because of what you've seen
and
in your life.
There are no women inventors, and that's because women are just simply not risk takers. They're not creative. They're not geniuses, and they're not leaders. They could be other things, but the evidence, you could give me a study all you want, but the record of history is perfectly clear. If
Yeah.
what you're saying is true, where are all the women billionaires that invented all the things? Where are all the women politicians that are leading all the movements?
This is
They're not
such
there.
a stupid fucking talking
They're
point.
not
But so
there.
is
We
yours.
just went over historically how
So
women were
women
prevented
invented the
from
circular
certain-
saw,
We must
the
move on.
aquarium, ice
Wait,
cream
women
maker,
were not
computer
allowed to-
algorithms.
Let me Google. Google.
Yeah,
Tell
I
me
did.
what women invented.
I'm not
Yeah,
googling
base.
anything. I'm trying to
Cool.
say that
Sarah
women
Mather
were
invented the submarine lamp and
women
telescope.
were kept
Um,
away.
Didn't
Move
invent the
forward.
fucking submarine. Are you kidding me?
I was just trying to
Submarine
respond
lamp.
to
No,
us.
I didn't say she
We
invented
have,
submarine.
we've
The
covered-
submarine
okay,
lamp.
Fuck is a submarine
we've,
lamp?
explored that
Sorry.
question.
And
thoroughly.
telescope on the
This one
submarine.
from
Pretty big.
But we-
Okay.
Band
Periscope?
of Dragonite.
There must be a constant war against women to suppress them. I think that women are off the reservation. They're totally off the rails. And that's because we ceased. There was a cessation in hostilities and oppression for a moment. There was a lapse in conflict in a brutal war of violence and dominance against women. And now they're naked in the streets, trying to kill our babies, raping little kids in schools, because all women are pedophiles. And so we need a resumption of war against women, a resumption of the eternal war against womankind. Is my
Well,
real
I think you're getting
position.
that. I think you're getting that because women make up about 50% of the population. And they definitely make up the vast majority of people who can get pregnant. And currently we're filing legislation that limits the rights of people who don't want to be pregnant. So I think that, and most of those people, again, are women. So it seems like if there's a war on any particular gender, one of the things that it might be characterized by might be like, I don't know, legislation targeting that gender and limiting freedoms that existed for like a generation already for that gender. So if that were to happen, perhaps there might be a war currently being engaged. So maybe
I agree. It's
like,
just it's just getting started.
Right, so you're saying
Well, Ryan,
good,
it's
but
just
it is
getting
happening,
started.
right?
Yeah, I'm
Ryan,
saying
we
we're resuming.
I believe
our-
you. I really
our
do, Nick. I really
endless
do believe you.
war.
You're just getting started.
Ryan,
That's
I
right.
also
We're
think
resuming
that
our
if-
endless war against women. Abortion just the beginning, and then it's
Yep.
going to come with skirts. It's going to come driver's license.
on,
That's
but
going
Nick,
away.
you're
Do you
defeating
think
the
that
purpose.
Workplace,
skirts are inherently
literacy.
Nick,
like,
your
feminine?
existence is a wait.
Because there
hold
are
on.
some cultures where like men do wear
Trying to be
skirts
feminist.
and it's seen as masculine.
We're bringing back like a kilt or something.
My dad got
Yeah.
married in a kilt.
But kilts are
Pretty basic.
kilts are cringe. I don't subscribe to that
You think they're
Anglo
cringe?
nonsense. I don't
Okay.
subscribe to
I
that.
just feel like if
nonsensical
the concern here
Anglo
is women
traditions.
running around
What
naked
about
in the streets,
robes?
or
Do you think robes
like
are
what
feminine?
Ryan is saying that the,
Men
No.
wear robes.
Yeah, I
I just
would wear a
knew.
robe like an emperor.
But
Absolutely.
a robe is like a dress, is it not?
No, I think women, the
It's
appropriate
different than a
attire
dress.
is
I think it's
something
different
like
than a
a
dress.
full
We have a-
facial covering and a full body covering as well.
We have
Says no fault divorce is part of the war on men.
Yeah.
yeah.
that's actually really quite disgusting if you think that
Oh,
women
this
having
guy.
the ability to leave their husbands is somehow a war on men. I think that
That's
speaks,
actually
I think-
really quite disgusting.
That speaks
I
volumes
do want to
against-
give you
Gross.
a chance to speak.
I just think that speaks volumes against men. Like it sounds like you're the one waging a war on man or on men simply with your ridiculously low expectations. Do you really think that a woman having the right to divorce her husband if need be, that's somehow an attack on men? Should women
You
just
really
be
think-
forced to be
Yes.
married forever to the man?
Yes, that's what marriage is.
In
It's
what
death do us
circumstance?
part.
Not if you get a divorce.
In what circumstance? Is there ever a circumstance in which you believe that
Yeah,
divorce would
if
be
the church allows it, you can go to the church and get the marriage annulled.
I mean,
which
for the
means to say
woman
that
to
the
make the
marriage has
decision.
never happened. No,
Would
I
we-
think
would
that
we
you
be
shouldn't get
taking
If the
married.
woman's actually
Were we
getting beaten,
getting the
if she's-
choice taken away from
Oh,
men
give me
too?
a
Then at
break.
that
It takes
point,
two to fight.
Well, wait. I'd
That's
like to just
right.
add
would
on to
it
this
would
very
it be
quickly.
would
Hey,
it be would
equal
it be
Wait, hold
rights.
on. Wait. What Nick
Equal
said is
fights.
it's very relevant here. So
That's what I say.
So right now, I know for the anti-intellectual losers here that it's very scary to bring up studies, but I'm going to do it again.
Oh,
Studies
boy.
have literally shown
This is
that-
great content.
you seem to be getting really mad that I'm just bringing up studies, but studies have already demonstrated that men who partake in these traditional masculine ideas, that they have to be stoic, they have to be strong, in control, are more likely to inflict violence on women. So if there is more violence being inflicted on women, it's more likely that the women who are married to the violent man will divorce the man. So actually, by again addressing the toxic masculinity, which is what I came here originally to talk about, this is going to result in less divorce. Furthermore, Nick, I think it's a little telling that you wouldn't be in favor of a woman divorcing her husband, even if he were beating her every night.
That's right. I wouldn't want my wife to divorce me.
What if she were? What if you were? What if she was like getting raped every night?
Women.
Wait, hold on,
Well,
I think-
marital rape is not real. 1, 2. Women like violence. That's why they
Yes, it is.
all
It's very
fantasize
real.
about rape.
Yeah.
So, boom,
Wait,
my
hold
job.
on. So
I
the
think
thing
I
is,
don't
I
even
think
need to respond to
provoking-
that. I think I'll just let
Checkmate.
that sit there by
And they
itself.
provoke-
I'll just
You're,
like
let that
a
there.
woman laying on the kitchen
Stardust.
floor.
Nick,
Let it
Nick,
sit there.
you're Catholic, right? I think you're Catholic.
Stardust, I think
I'm
you said
Catholic, yeah.
something.
what I would say is that again, this idea that women didn't work is not right. Women have always worked. They just were restricted to very specific industries.
Oh, they worked
So,
it.
I mean, they worked. They worked in very specific industries, tailoring, childcare, things like that. It's only recently that they've entered into roles in which men typically filled, but it doesn't. I think. Oh man, I lost track of the question. I'm gonna be real with you guys. I lost track of the question.
This is why women shouldn't have jobs. By the way. There it is. There it is. There was a quota for women
No,
on the
that's
panel.
not it. Okay,
That's what he told
so-
us. That's what they told us before the debate.
No. So I think I think that if you pushed a woman out of the workforce, you wouldn't be returning to what it was. It would be something completely different. Women have always been working, even when they're not working. They're talking amongst each other and influencing policy decisions within government and things like that. So.
Alan says to Nick, what
Wait.
would you say is your
No,
biggest
go ahead.
disagreement with Hunter?
I think Hunter's an idiot. I don't think he has any valid positions. And I'm not saying that just to be a dick. I mean, I literally think he's too low IQ to even respect
What's
a
but a
so-called
position? I have to
difference of
press you.
opinion. I don't think I don't think his positions are grounded. I think he has opinions like like a child or a female or a dog has.
But what are they
opinions.
are?
Which is
Instead
actually
of
quite
using it to use him as a punching bag, what's the position that you have that you'd most disagree on?
Well, he's an atheist. I would say that's foundational, as he doesn't believe in God. That's number one.
I'm waiting in
Nick's
line
opening,
actually for
he
my
said that
ninth.
the war on men is all about feminism. He
Please
said the war
get
on
as
men
fast
is
as
all
you
about
can.
feminism, and I agree with him. I agree that from his perspective, what he perceives as the war on men is all about feminism. It's all about this force that was women pushing against the box that people had placed, or society at the time had placed women in, and decided like this is the role that women are supposed to fulfill. And when women said no, fuck that, we don't like this role. A lot of them did. Some of them maybe enjoyed it. I don't know. It doesn't matter. I'm talking about the ones that didn't. They pushed against it, and eventually, again, we moved to a point where less women are expected to fit into those boxes. And you're really upset about that. And so when you say the war on men is all about feminism, I think you're 100% right about your perspective on the war on men.
Well,
It is
when it
feminism.
comes to-
You perceive women pushing against those antagonistic forces as a war on men. Because
It's
you
not.
believe that
It's
natural
not
order
women.
has to exist.
Women weren't pushing. It was like Jews behind them. It was like
Yeah.
Jewish men. Women don't
And there
rise
No,
up
it-
against.
it
It's
was
like
probably
that
some
scene.
Jewish
It's like
women.
that
There was
scene
also
in
women- there was
Django.
also
No,
non-Jewish
it
women.
was like that scene in Django Unchained when Leonardo DiCaprio says, "Why don't they rise up and kill us? It's because their skulls associated with submissiveness." That's the same thing with women. Women aren't pushing up against anything. There's a bunch of Jewish guys that said, "Hey,
Right,
go
so I get
stand.
to
Hey,
check
here's
off
the
the
sign.
JQ
Go
No,
stand
it's
over
just
there."
the JQ
Bingo
shit.
card.
So just like we've made these roles so tight that people feel like they need to some people may feel like they need to transition because they don't fit perfectly within their gender role. And I feel like if we are able to expand what is expected of men and women, that will have maybe less people will feel the need to do things to change from the fact, if you can say whatever about like women following evil or whatever, it's still, the fact is that men commit 84% of violent crimes. Right. That's just the fact of it.
And those men tend to have had angry women and not fathers in their lives.
Why are women not making up for that?
They're all black. The problem is this concept that marriage is not a sacrament, that marriage is not, people are not taking this seriously as a sacrament. It's just like the abortion thing. Oh, well, they're taking away the rights of pregnant people. Don't fornicate. They're taking away the rights of married people. Don't get married. And if you want to get it annulled, then you got to go to some authority. But the problem is people are, particularly women, but people in general are being given too much freedom and autonomy. That's the issue. I think that your question presupposes that this is something that has simply happened. I don't think that it's simply happened. I think it's the result of some things that are by design and then some things that have just been neglected. Because you see in other countries like China, for example, which I like China. China recently put a ban on how many hours people can play video games. In other Asian countries, they have a ban on pornography. Certainly, these are two measures that could be taken that I think are going to change the kind of men that you're getting in the society. If there's a limit to how much television, screen time, video games men are getting, if porn is restricted, if drugs are prohibited, you're getting a completely different kind of male. And so your question almost presupposes that you have men that are like this, and this is just how it has to be. I don't think it has to be that way. I think that, and then conversely, where men have been displaced in the society, largely you're seeing this in the interior of the country, where you have a lot of ghost towns that have been hollowed out because of deindustrialization. And so the men can't find jobs. And what you'll find in a lot of these small towns in America is the highest paying jobs in the town will be the hospital, the school, and the women will fill the jobs, and they'll get the government salary and the pension and the benefits. And it's sort of emasculating men. And so the point is, this society didn't come from nowhere. This society was created, and some of it was intentional and some of it was unintentional. But I think that in order to correct, we've got to understand, and to answer Hunter's question, why are men killing themselves? It's not because there are too many expectations. It's probably because there's not enough expectation. And so the man is sort of an individual and out there in the world and being heaped, all these things are being heaped upon him. Oh, you got to be strong, but also you got to be weak. You got to be nice, but also you got to be assertive. And so I think that to answer both questions, we've got to create a society where men can flourish as men and their sort of relative relational position in the society, which is the husband, the father, the caretaker, the soldier, the priest. That's what we need to create for men. And I don't think it's inevitable. Don't get me wrong. Technology has introduced, and urbanization and technology has introduced a special circumstance, but I don't think it has to be this way. And other countries like Russia, China, others, they're trying to at least facilitate a more traditional society, even in a modern world.
Even when you say that, like, the men who aren't finding jobs or something are like emasculated, like, this is part of what we are talking about, is that at its core, masculinity doesn't need to be reduced to just you are the provider. If you are in a situation where it makes more sense for the wife to go work and you are home with the kids, you as a man, being a masculine man, are still a provider. You are just providing something different for the overall benefit of the family. These are called traditional values, Nick. I don't know if you've heard of them.
There's nothing traditional.
This is unironically like
it's not just. Go ahead.
This is an important part for the topic of toxic masculinity. When we talk about these ideas of what it means to be a man, and now all of a sudden, what do we have? Maybe we have a dude who got fired from his job or got injured at his job and is unable to work. Now, all of a sudden, societies are telling him, and Nick is telling him, that he is somehow less of a man. He is not masculine enough. And I don't think that that's right. I don't think that's fair at all. I don't think whether or not you are a man or how masculine you are should be hinged upon whether or not you're actually the one providing the finances. I think that that should be left more up to a family dynamic. And this is why families benefit more when they are a little looser than this. And this is why, again, men's mental health does better when they are not forced into these rigid gender standards.